Hey guys, this is Tolly and welcome to Let's Build a JRPG, part something or another. I think I've labeled this video Cutscenes Part 3, because we're still kind of continuing with the cutscene stuff. Alright, where are we at? It's been a little bit, at least probably a month and a half minimum, since the last time we streamed anything. There's been some improvements on some of the look of things. We've improved the character to actually have a walk cycle. When we last were here, he was still sliding. We've also improved the tile set. These walls have been kind of gotten a new makeover by Drixie with the new kind of
Hi,
look.
guys.
Also, Drixie's here.
Yo.
So we kind of got this up and running. Drixie's joining me today on some UI work. Currently working on the ability progression screen. So if we kind of come into here and we click on one of these things, this screen is kind of mocked up in the game and kind of semi-functional. There's still actually a fair amount of work left to do on it. But Drixie's working on kind of a version. In fact, Drixie's working on several versions. This is the third variant.
Yeah, you want me to give you guys a rundown?
Yeah, if you want to go through some of the other ones real quick before I dive into just giving some
Sure.
code stuff.
Let me just...
Seems
So
like a more
currently,
interesting way to start.
got this guy. Let me just make this real nice here. I think that's the best way to show it off. And I'll just put the background back on. I wasn't very happy with the background, so I was going to do it again. There's this version, which is just the giving this a little isometric depth, which is kind of cool. And then there's also the dithering kind of shadowing, which I thought was nice. But neither of them really scream completion to me. So that's why checkerboard style. And down the line we have the isometric.
Which I think
towers?
I think is very interesting, but I can't figure out a design way to make this work in terms of like ability progression, like which node goes to which node. We might explore this one further, but this one I think is more of a rough idea.
This one was just more fun. It
I think
bounces.
yes, because it bounces. But it also led us to the checkerboard. Like we progressed past this into the checkerboard, which I think is a better version of this one.
For sure. Then we got the isometric dragon style here. Just like the more classic style of node map. A little bit of 3D dimension here at the shadowing makes it look like it really pops out. But other words, flat.
The inspiration for this one was the color brown, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, conversations around me were talking about brown. I'm like, I'll just wing it. Just go brown. Everybody seems to like it, and then no one liked it. It's very sad.
We were complaining about how brown Eye of Divinity is.
No, not
Not Eye of Divinity. Path of Exile. I think that was where you got that, but it wasn't that we liked the brown. We were like,
You were complaining about the brown, so I had to make it brown.
Ah, excellent.
And I had the first one. Classic pipes and notes. Nothing really wrong here for my first attempt.
Yep. I like some of the kind of elements of this one, but we're gonna go through all of these at a later point, probably off camera, and kind of check down. Like we're doing 3 different variants, and we're gonna take a look at those 3 variants and try and decide what elements we like of them, which ones we don't, and try and combine where we can. Basically, is the idea. But for today, I think Drixie is going to be mainly focusing on this one.
Yeah.
With the checkerboard in the background, and maybe if you get bored of that, you might wander off to some other UI screens, or maybe just do some monster doodling. We'll see.
You know what? Maybe I'll just start another type of checkerboard. Because you were saying this one's size isn't quite there.
Yeah, I mean, so you have that template, the plaid template is that's an image somewhere, right? That you reserved or
I saved.
Yeah, you saved. You could duplicate that and start a new section, and then maybe try scaling it up. I don't know if you can scale it up in a value other than by 2, though. But yeah, you could try doubling this plaid and then maybe make the checkerboard double the size. Because the icons aren't reading right now is really the thing that we're looking at.
Yeah, not really doing much of anything.
Good evening, Tobias Random on the Twitch side.
Good evening, morning, or afternoon.
Mm-hmm. You are correct. Okay, so I'm gonna leave you here, kind of playing with this, and I'm gonna switch back over to this scene where I'll leave you in the bottom right, and then we're gonna kind of head back over into the game. So for me, Drix is gonna be over there working on UI stuff. I'm going to be kind of taking a look at the cutscenes again today. We've looked at a few streams for the last few streams. I did a fair amount of work in between. Again, we have this walking character. We've kind of redone the tile art for the dungeon itself. Kind of got a new refined version of that. And where we left off with the cutscene was we had the dialogue showing up on the bottom, which I realized when reviewing that video afterwards that was being covered pretty much the entire evening, the last time we streamed, by Drixie's feed.
Sorry.
No, it was,
Not my fault.
It was not your fault. I wasn't paying attention.
My bad.
But I said at the end of the last stream that I really wanted to get the dialogue anchoring to the character. And I've kind of done a first pass of that. Rudimentarily, it's like anchoring to an object and it always anchors above. I do want to play with the ability to have it anchor below the character as well. So if we walk up to the edge here, I also want to try and make it so that I can choose for each dialogue option whether or not I want it above or whether or not I want it to display below the character. So if we go to components, dialogue, basically if we were to do this and then grab the arrow, invert its Y and then anchor to the top -2, so something like that. But there's going to be a bit more work to make this thing kind of do that arrow flip. Basically the arrow will need to adjust itself based off of where the character is standing. But anyways, we're kind of getting there with the dialogue. It's getting closer, it's looking better. But we have a few other issues I need to solve before we can kind of dig back into like the anchoring stuff. Him sliding is not great. His animation should be updating and he should be moving ideally in a more like predictable way. He also continues walking even when he's done moving. And then when we finish the sequence, he teleports back to where it all started. So there's some weird kind of messy things happening, and so I want to kind of clean up a bit of that this evening. And this kind of feeds into the previous scene. So if we go back to the sewer dungeon, not the cutscene scene, but the sewer scene, and we kind of take a look in here, we've got a variant of the same character kind of doing a little walk. And again, there's a few other things in here like interacting with a character, interacting with items, and picking them up. And then if we go into our inventory, we can actually see that we have 6 potions, and if we go pick up another one of these potions, we can see that we have 7. So like we've got some interactability. But I spent a bit of time in this scene working on the character and kind of getting his movement feeling good, and I got these like pickup moments working. But the problem I'm running into, and the first thing we need to solve this evening, is this character is a prefab, but I'm not really like managing it very well. And so when I went to go back to the cutscene stuff, I had to like update all the scripts and update all the values. Like this base speed in the other scene is actually 1.25, I think. And so like he was walking slow. Yeah, now he's walking at a more reasonable speed. I thought he felt slow when we were walking up to the cutscene. So like that type of stuff is annoying. So I think I want to try and make it so that this player and even the camera settings, because this camera operates different from the camera in the other scene as well. This one has like a box you can walk within, and then when you get to the edge, then the camera starts moving, whereas in the sewer scene, I'm pretty sure it's just anchored to the player center, so it always moves. There isn't like that kind of safety zone that he can walk around in. So all that stuff needs to be consistent between my scenes. So we need to take this character and we need to make it a prefab that gets spawned into the scene. And we can maybe choose like a waypoint or something where we want to place him, but we shouldn't have to keep editing these values every single time. So how do we get started with that? how do we get started with that? I think step one is the camera needs to be part of the player. I think I want to break the prefab entirely. Is there a way to break prefab? Unpack completely. Okay, so now it's not a prefab anymore. And we'll use this one as the base. So this thing has what inside of it? It has...
Oh, that's no good. 1.5 times does not work.
Just because... yeah. Okay.
No, that's...
So it has to be 2 times?
Yeah.
Oh, is this... And this is 1.5 times. That's already very huge.
Yeah. Play around with it. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm just thinking, like, is there a way... So if you go back to, like, the what it was originally, like, if you scale it back down, can you do that?
No, I had to do some weirdness to get it to the point where I'm at now. Just for curiosity's sake. That looks pretty bad.
Yeah, it gets all kind of jaggedy. Okay, I'll let you continue to play with it. I have thoughts, but I'm going to let you continue to explore. But there should be a way to make it like an in-between size. You just might have to maybe break the 2x1 convention of going 2 to the left and up 1 when we're doing the isometric tiles. But okay, so my player has a rigid body, then it has a sort group, which I don't think is necessary. I'm gonna leave it for now. An isometric player movement, which also needs a rework. This thing got a little bit hacked in between the last 2 streams, and it's kind of needs a overhaul. We've got this capsule collider, which is a trigger, which I think is for triggering when the character gets close to items right now, is the purpose of that. Okay. And then it has a player input controller, which is listening for basically the enter button, and that's what's causing the interact. And then it has a entity, which is player, and then it has an interactable detector. Then one level down from that, we have the collider, which is not a trigger. So this is the thing that actually prevents us from walking into walls. So when we walk into things, it keeps us from moving. Right, okay, and then we have this witch object, which is nothing. Then we have... Oh, it's not nothing. It actually has a small Y position. So that is causing this thing to be offset slightly. Oh, that's bad.
It's so bad.
It's not bad, it's just...
It's so bad.
It's lame that that's how that's set up. We might want to try and break that as well. Then we have the Sprite Renderer, which is in charge of rendering the character as well as updating the movement positions. So that's what's handling the animations. And then this has an entity component for the actual like sprite itself for when we want to try and find this renderer. And then we also have a little shadow under the character, which is scaled very weirdly.
Oh.
But that's because I warped old shadow that Drixa gave me a while ago in order to fit. Okay. Okay. Let's slow things down. So, before I worry about breaking this down, let's just make it a prefab. So, to start with, really we're going to have player container. And the player container is going to have the player's camera, and it's going to have the player itself. Okay? And then the player container... Actually, let's move that back out. the player container should be at like 0, 0, 0. And the player container should never move. The camera can move and the player can move, but the player container should always be at 0. And this is just a thing to be able to have both of these objects inside of one prefab. And so now we need to put this in a prefab folder somewhere. For now, those are front-end prefabs. This is just a section called prefabs, UI, store. We have a dungeon section, right? Yeah, we have a section for dungeon stuff. Let's make a new folder in here called prefab. I'm kind of in between changing up my architecture to have like basically instead of everything being under the JRPG assets, but instead having like dungeon folder, front end folder, and then eventually I want to kind of move some stuff into like a combat folder. Okay, so then we've got this player container. Now, instead of just having this player container in every scene as a prefab, I think what I'd like to do is instead create the player container on loading of the scene. And when we transition between scenes, it should also load this player container, I think. Let's start there. Okay, so this is going to be player spawn. And player spawn is going to need a new script. Player spawn. Okay, add that here. And then let's take a look at our pooling stuff to see how we normally spawn objects. Specifically looking for the allocate. Addressable, instantiate, async, on complete, add. Okay. Okay. So we're going to steal this code, specifically the addressable, instantiate, async, given an ID and a position. The already exists stuff we might want to steal as well, or we might want to put this into its own helper function. Addressable locator, lokes, check to see if key. I see. Okay, that's part of a different system. Okay, so we're going to grab this. On start, we're going to add the proper references. Okay, and this is going to need the player. So for now, we're going to just hard code this value. So player addressable ID, and that is going to be player container prefab. All right, and so then I don't think I want to parent this. So grab this string. We're going to set this prefab we made to have that ID. We're then going to delete this player container. And now on start, this player spawn should load up that player object into the scene and be able to walk around. Okay. Now, at this current time, the player is currently in some random position in space, which matches the scene. If we set that to 0, 0, he spawns outside the world. Okay. So we also need the player spawn after it loads to do object. Technically, it should be in the scene already, so we should be able to get entity by ID. Find the player. Technically, I should be able to find the object I'm looking for without having to go search for it this way, but I think this is just going to be faster. Transform is equal to this dot transform. This dot position is equal to this transform dot position. Okay, so set the player's position to wherever the player spawn is. So if the player spawn is here, put him all the way over there. He should spawn in that room. And he doesn't. Were there errors?
So just so we're all on the same page here, Tolhi, this is it completely doubled. This is 2 times.
It's taking up the whole screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not going to work.
No.
It's too big. How do we do?
I don't know if we can get this ISO map to work with the 17 tiles that you want.
So we should be able to do an in-between size. But for that in-between size, you may not be able to make them perfect, like, in terms of their sizing.
Explain?
So we normally build these isometric tiles to be a step pattern of 2 to the left and then up 1. 2 to the left and up 1. Could you...
So they are normal.
In order to make them somewhere in between, so that it's not double the size, basically, you might have to adapt that pattern. So instead of being 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, it might need to be like 2 to the left, down 1, and like, yeah, you're like something more like that. And then what you can do potentially is like clean up the edge. The edge doesn't need to be a hard, fast line. I don't know.
Et voila.
Something like that, yeah. It's gonna look kind of weird.
I would call that like 1.5 times.
Yeah, it's gonna look weird in spots. Like you can see on your left side, there's like it's like not like the pixel, the staircase is not like correct. Obviously, it's not like predictable.
As long as they line up, that's my concern if we do this.
Yeah, so they may not line up, is the thing, but you might be able to just hide it by like giving it an organic border.
That's fair.
So like if you frame them, I wouldn't necessarily bring this into the other scene. I would try and maybe make 2 or 3 of these and see if you can find a way to make them like fit together, and then maybe give some sort of line in between to kind of break them up, because the line isn't going to be that kind of nice straight edge. It's going to have to be something a little bit, like I said, organic, something a little bit more custom. But
At least they fit like that.
the other option is might just be to overlap them a little bit too.
I don't like that idea.
I'll let you play. Play.
Play away.
Ah, the AI. So this is the problem with my system, is by making the player spawn in, there's other things that are breaking. Okay, let's start with this. So why is this broken? So the player thing hasn't been initialized by the entity manager yet. So in our prefab player container, we want to find the player. We do have a player tag. Oops. So we could do like a Unity find, but I think what's honestly going to be a safer bet is just to add another script here, which is going to be like player container, like let's just call it that for now, and then just have this player container script have a reference to the player. What am I writing? Brain activate string, no, game object, m player object. Okay. And then in the scene, drag the player object into there. And then if we go back to the player spawn, now on object that we spawn, we want to get components. Oh, is this not a mono behavior? Oh, dot result dot get component player container dot m player object dot transform dot position is equal to this position. Okay, so that should find the object correctly now. Open Unity back up. Exit out of here, hit play. Interesting. Player still spawned in the middle of nowhere. Errors? So we have lots of unreferenced, or let's fix this AI movement. So the AI is supposed to have a reference to the player target. But now this target isn't going to be in the scene all the time. Instead, this thing is going to need to basically check if target equals null. And then it's going to try and find get entity manager dot instance dot get entity by ID, try and find the player. This may return nothing at first. This returns an entity. Okay, entity player. This player, name it player entity, it's technically a little bit more accurate, and then lowercase p is my naming convention. If player entity equals null, just return. Let's just leave. We couldn't find it, just try again next update frame. Otherwise, we set target to equal player entity dot transform, because target is a transform, right? Yeah, okay. Now the AI that's wandering around up here looking for the player should be able to just find the player now. Okay, there was 2 errors. I'm going to guess that's because the entity manager wasn't found yet. So we're going to also make sure the entity manager does not equal null before going in here. And then for a small efficiency, we're going to do that first. Okay. Still just playing with sizing?
Well, usually I have a mirror tool up here and it's not popping up, so I was just very confused why it's not showing up. There you are.
Okay, technically we don't get into that function, so we need to actually just do it this way. If entity manager instance is equal to null, just leave. That's a bit hacky, but it's fine. Fine for now. Okay, we have no more errors. So we resolved the fact that the player is being spawned in. We fixed up the AI system. Now the AI system doesn't need to be public anymore. It can be private. And then why is the player not actually spawning where I want him to spawn? That's the next question. So let's add a breakpoint here and attach Unity. Yeah, enabled. And we run it. No? That was loud. I believe in Unity. In the meantime, we'll watch Trixie.
Ah! So I think I found a way to do it.
Okay.
But I did it too big, so I need to only get a little bit bigger. So we're just gonna go up by that many. And we're just gonna paste that. So that's the one I have. That's too big.
Okay.
And it's just a little bit smaller. A little bit smaller.
Just tinier?
A little bit smaller.
So now you want to arrange them around, like, you want to arrange 17 of them and see if that's going to fit on the screen or if that's too big.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, my code's done. All right, so...
I'm gonna make this one yellow, because I haven't done a yellow one yet.
Position 0, 0. This position 6.8, 21.0. So this should be setting the player object, which is the player object. Interesting. So it does set the position. It just ends up here in space anyways? Yeah, okay. Is this because of my weird teleportation logic?
Isn't everything because of your weird teleportation logic?
It is. Okay, so let's get into the weird teleportation logic. So in order to make this system work, one of the things I had to play with, and let's drag the character into a position where he can walk around. It's not going to let me. Okay.
Womp womp.
Alright. How do we make this not dumb? Okay.
Oh.
much dead code. All right. So what's happening is that my system has the ability to look at it's so much easier if I could just make it work first. Okay, let's go back into the prefab. Let's grab this position, copy component. Let's go into the player container, open the prefab, and then let's paste this value in here for now. Okay, so we've given it a position to start with. Should be in the room. Okay, yeah, we're here now. So when I walk around, right now the way the code is working is there's a bit of trickery happening in behind the scenes where when we walk diagonally like this, we actually are moving, honestly, the same thing that Drixie's been working with all night, where we move 2 to the left and up 1. When we move diagonally, we want to smoothly walk. Basically, the character should only ever move 2 pixels to the left or right and up 1. And then same thing up and down. So it's all just 2, 1. The problem is that if I let the player move normally, so if I remove kind of this code I have here, and I don't do any special logic around kind of snapping his position, I guess you could call it. He essentially is like jittering. It's small and a little hard to notice. It gets a little easier to notice when you like turn down his movement speed a lot. But you can kind of see how the camera is like kind of jittering a little bit. That jitter is because he's moving 1 pixel to the right, 1 pixel to the right, 1 pixel up, 1 pixel to the right, 1 pixel to the right, 1 pixel up. And so that looks kind of bad. So in order to try and fix that, what I've done is I've made it so instead, inside of his movement code, we keep track of an internal position and that we update. And we only update the rigid body to move if the internal position if the y value has changed. So only if the y value of the player has shifted do we actually update the rigid body. The problem is we're updating this internal position, and this means that the rigid body is no longer in control. And so when we walk into walls and stuff, inside of the script, it's still updating that internal position. And so that internal position right now is actually thinking he should be all the way over here. So when we turn around and push the other way, he doesn't like move back right away. And that's because inside of the script, it's still moving that kind of hidden value back out of the wall before he'll continue moving. This is obviously very bad. So in order to fix this, we need to change it so that this internal position is not inside of the character. And I was hoping I could get away with not doing that this evening, but we're going to have to. So if we drag the character in, let's just drag it in 0, 0. Let's grab the character and pull him down here, right? What we need to do is we need to disconnect the movement section of the player and the render section of the player. So let's make a new empty game object. Let's call this player object. Inside of that player object, we're going to want to have the movement logic we have. That's not what I wanted to do. Fine. Apply. Do I have to do this in the prefab? Is that what you're basically telling me? How do I prefab apply? Okay. Fine. If you want to make me have to do it in here, I'll do it in here. So we want to have the movement in here, but instead of the position that we're updating with our rigid body, the thing that we're actually moving around, having the renderer parented underneath of it, I think what we need to do is we need to drag the renderer out. So this becomes the player renderer. This becomes the player movement. I think that all stays the same. Okay. Now, the problem's going to be that this object is going to need to move, and what we need to do now is we need to make it so this player sprites updates to match this player's movement, but only if the Y value has changed from the last position we remembered, basically. So...
Okay. I think I got the right size.
This is looking more correct to you?
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah?
I've got lots of space over here. I don't think I'll maybe just have a title here. Oh, we need the controls on the bottom. That's a little room for variation, right?
Yep. We could tweak it.
Well, each skill is going to have a different map of this.
Yes,
Yeah,
but we could try and make sure that the map never goes into the bottom right corner in order to give space for the controls.
Yeah, or I just don't have this border, and I have the controls like there.
Yeah, the border might not work.
The border was just for funsies because I didn't want to stare at a blank screen.
That's fair.
And borders are funsies.
Okay. So now the question is, if you bring in the icons you were working with in the previous version...
I don't think those icons are going to work.
No?
No, I think they are the problem.
Could you go back to the original version of the icon and then make... Well, I guess the original is what you... Yeah, that guy.
Coin.
So this wasn't reading very well in the other one. And the expectation we had was that that was because it was too small. So if you take that and bring it into the other map and then scale it up, obviously it's going to break. But yeah, you can like double that thing now. At least. Yeah, that you'd have to clean it up a fair amount, I think. But like that feels like enough room that you should be able to make an icon that reads as like a shield or a sword.
Yeah.
It might be better to start with like the flat image and then do the 45-degree squish to turn it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd go back through all my buttons. Oh, why does it keep doing that? Stop.
Okay, I'm gonna let you continue over there.
I'm gonna let you go.
I'm gonna let you finish. Alright, so let's see. Okay, so I need to make this player sprites update to match this player movement, and then this isometric movement shouldn't do any of this logic in here. We shouldn't have to have an internal position. So we're going to basically take some of this logic out of here, and we're going to put it into a new script. So let's just make that new script, which is going to go under the dungeon section as well. And we're going to call this, like everything here, player renderer updater. It's a weird name, but I'm going to just go with it. And then this thing here on update is going to want to have a reference to the transform of the player position object. So we're basically separating out the player's position in the world and the player's renderer, and there'll be two separate things. And they don't have, the renderer won't match the position of the character perfectly. It'll instead match it as long as it's within the right value. I can see there's going to be problems with this, but let's just kind of work through it. Let's make the code. Let's make it do the things, and then we'll go from there.
Do the things.
So we won't need this anymore. So we're gonna need this logic over here. So this dot position is going to equal Is it just this simple? Do we... No, we still need to pixelize it. So what this pixel function is doing, which I also need to bring over, is essentially based off the pixels per unit, rounding the position in Unity to the nearest pixel. And we're still going to need that. So we're going to basically round isn't exactly the right word, but basically round. We're going to round the position of this object, transform.position, and that will become current position. And then this needs to be the player position object dot position. This is actually technically the player position transform. So I'm just going to call it the player position. So that, I think, might be what we want. And then over inside of here, we basically just want to update our movement. We want to ignore all of this like pixelization stuff, I think. We just want to... I don't think we want to have this internal position anymore. I think we want to just rigid body.move position. I'm just going to do this. I might have to go back and look at how the code was written before I started writing all this nonsense, but we're going to start there and see how that works. Okay, so then if we give this thing, we're going to have to rehook up the reference because I renamed it. So this thing's going to keep track of this player movement. This thing will move around. This player sprites object will move around to match. And these should be 0, 0, and this should be basically offset so that the shadow looks like it's under his feet. That's long and short of it. Okay. Okay, so the player isn't moving at all. Oh, we have 2 in the scene. Might be a problem as well. Okay. So the player isn't moving. Is the position moving? It is not. Okay, so we got something wrong with the update. We're going to name this just to be clear. Pt.3 new position. Still no movement? Okay, I'm moving the character, but nothing happening. Nothing is happening. Alright, so... breakpoint time. Oh, are we erroring? Oh, we are. The ISO render needs to be updated based off of the direction of the movement. But the ISO renderer isn't in the children anymore. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so... we can hack fix that for now. We can just make that a direct reference instead of trying to find it, which isn't great. In fact, I feel like my gut instinct is that the input vector then shouldn't be necessarily baked into the input. Sorry, the input vector shouldn't be baked into the movement. I think it probably should be a separate thing, and that movement vector should be passed into both the sprite ISO renderer thing as well as the into the player movement. But for now, we'll continue to update it this way. I just want to separate them eventually, I think. Okay, well that's worse. Cool. So now he's super jittery. Why did you become super jittery? So this is moving fluidly. That to me looks like he moves forward then backward. Let's slow things down. Yeah. Okay, so why? Why are things worse? Okay. So we are moving to this position. Interesting. So you can see he's moving slightly before this gets updated. So it... Huh. So if we slow him down even more... Oh, is it because the player camera is tracking the player movement, but the player camera should track the player sprite? Oh god, that's worse. So I think I am right with that assumption, but something's still broken. There's always something. How goes things in art world?
Good.
You working on an icon?
Yeah, I want to just try and make it design something on for the edge here. I don't know. I feel like it may distract from it being weird. I'm also just not really sure what I'm doing, but I kind of like this. I'm pulling old ideas from the Battleground because I love these designs and I kind of want to integrate them everywhere.
Okay.
Not that one. That one looks kind of cheesy, but like these ones are cool. And this is it kind of rotated and cleaned up. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it work, but I'm just kind of playing with it.
All right, cool.
What do you think? Do you like the hey, come here.
Oh, I'll go back.
The line around it to kind of divide it?
I do, yeah. It makes it look a little elevated, which I think looks neat.
I can make it look elevated, or I can make it look like elevated. What am I doing? Map details, that's the one. Because I can give it the illusion of height. I just took some of that off. I'm gonna keep that in the middle. No, there's gonna be a button in there.
Yeah, there's going to be an icon in the center.
I just killed that. Much work.
Okay. I'm still interested to see the icon, honestly, is where my head's at. I really want to see what the icon looks like at this size. Because that was the thing we were struggling with in the other one, is can we make icons that look readable? And the fact that we have to turn them sideways so that they look like they fit on the isometric grid is the tricky bit here.
It really is. Pardon me. Make this
Okay.
look elevated. Because I can.
Okay, why are you the jitter master? This looks like he's moving smoothly. It's really the renderer. And this isn't moving, right? No, it's not. The scale changes as it flips left and right, but like there's nothing actually moving here. So it's all this thing. And this thing is pointing at it. If we change this to a frame instead, and then we give it a dead zone, is it the camera? Okay, interesting. So it's not... It's not the character that's jittering. It's the Cinemachine tracking that's jittering. For some reason, by separating it out this way, Cinemachine gets very upset. Can we still walk into edges? We can. And it now works correctly. So it is just a problem with Cinemachine. So maybe it shouldn't track the transposer. So it shouldn't track the sprite renderer. Maybe it should track the movement. Still a bit jittery overall. Very upsetting. Okay, this might require a fair amount more research, because this is now a problem with Cinemachine. not with my actual system. And it's specifically, I have done some research on this in the past, because when I was first trying to solve the jitter, I thought it was something to do with the camera, and I did read up a lot, and I did find out that like Cinemachine really doesn't like it if you have like something that is jittery. But the previous versions were working, but I guess the previous versions were working because technically I was updating an internal position, and that internal position was what was getting tracked. Some of these walls in this area are really broken. I still need to do a cleanup pass on some of those. Oh, interesting. When I switched it off and back on again. Huh. Is there some different settings I could set here to make this feel a little better? No, it doesn't seem like any of these things are helping. Okay, well, that's an off-camera problem. How do I make this not garbage for the time being, though?
Hot garbage.
Any of these look... Simple follow with world up. Well, simple follow doesn't track. Okay.
That doesn't work very well.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to make my circles. But circles are hard.
Specifically isometric circles?
Yes. They're the bane of my existence now. I thought I needed one larger, because 32 by 32 circles are way too small.
Okay.
But
48 by 48?
it did not work either.
Okay.
Because you gotta think, I draw it in 48 by 48, but then I still shrink the top by half. So I'm like, okay, what size do I do?
So I guess if...
This is 32 by 32. It looks perfect, but once I do a smoosh and do a woof, it's so small now. It also doesn't look like it fits.
Huh. But that's what you were doing for the other ones, right? You were drawing the kind of the orbs flat and then doing that rotate squish, and it was looking correct?
Yes, but I also have more of a dimension on them, I think I want to say.
Okay.
I want to try actually just making these flat, like that even? Kind of looking at you?
Kind of works.
I don't really know. You don't really know.
Yeah, because if you just make them pure flat, it looks like a UI element sitting on, like, in
Looks
front of.
silly.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Okay, well...
If I just have a little flame. Just don't do buttons.
I'm... I know what I'm doing is the right call. Just, we're not updating this, right? This never updates, yeah. And this updates But it updates based off of player sprite. The player sprite. Huh. Really am at a loss on this one. Again, I think it's better if I just leave it, but I can't really leave it. Okay, let's... Obviously needs to be faster than that. You can see even when I slow it down that there's like a pop. That might help. Okay. So what I did, and that may have just fixed it, was I changed the brain to do a late update. So basically I'm updating the camera. Fixed update is like, there's like a whole flow chart for Unity, but basically the fixed update, late update, all the different updates, update at different times. Okay. And by changing it so that the camera updates at late update instead, it means that all the player movement stuff will be done. What was probably happening was that we were updating the camera, then updating the player, then updating the camera on the next frame to be where the camera was at the end of the last frame. But by causing this to be on late update, we do all of the player updating stuff first, and then the camera gets updated at the very end so that there's not kind of a pop back and forth. I'm gonna guess that's what was happening. All right. So that still looks... At some point my eyes play tricks on me, and I can't tell whether or not that is actually... Is that working? Is that jittering now? When I just walk this way, is there a jitter? Honestly, I can't tell. I think it's better. That looks a lot more smooth to me. It's definitely... I mean, clearly it's not doing all the crazy, like, stuttering thing, so... Okay, cool. So now we should be able to actually set the player spawn. So this needs to set the player object transform position, which should now be, if we go to here and open this container, that should point at player movement still. Okay, it does. So if we set all of this to 0, 0. It works correctly. The only problem is the camera doesn't update as well. So the camera should also be positioned with the player. Also... Is it right that it's being positioned still up and to the left? Where's the player? Oh yeah, the player spawn is up there. So if we move the player spawn down to here, player should spawn right there. Okay. Okay, and we're not getting any more weird teleportation, which makes sense. Okay. That all seems better. Now, one thing that I think might be a problem is that in repositioning this thing around, yeah, we moved the player. Oh, I was afraid of that. Okay, so we saw in the original prefab for this thing, which we can check on by going back to the Where was that? Let's go to the cutscene, because we haven't messed with that one. Save this scene. We look at this guy. We had this idea of the witch object, and that witch object was 0.1 up before we got to the renderer. So, oh, this one didn't have the shadow either. But I think when we just created this new prefab, we've kind of lost that 0.1 up nonsense. Yeah, we can see that our colliders and stuff are slightly off from where they were before. So I guess we just need to move the collider 0.1. 0. Okay, the easiest way to do this is going to be to compare them side by side. So let's go to the cutscene, which still has the old version, and let's bring in the player container version. And then let's try and line these two guys up. For now, we're just going to move the player container, which I don't want to do normally, but I'm going to just do for the sake of this. Okay, so then his... Oh, all of their transforms are super wonk. This one isn't a good reference. Really, the original one would be better. Okay, so let's bring up source tree. I'm going to do this on the other monitor, but I'm basically going to discard my changes. Okay, actually, let's make sure there isn't anything we want before we discard. So let's go back into here. Let's copy this thing and bring it over to this scene just so that we keep track of this player spawner thing. And then I'm going to discard the work I did in the previous scene so that we go back to the original character. So if we go back into... Save this. Here, the player is back because I discarded it on the other monitor. Okay, now we bring this guy in. Grab the player object. Okay, so these need to match. This is lined up almost exactly on his cape in this version, so that can be a reference point for us. Manually drag it down to about there. That looks pretty close, okay? And then this one here is somewhere in between these two. This line touches right about there on that dark pixel on the back of his boot. So if we come into this one and we offset this thing eight 8.5, 8.8, 8.9, 0.9. That's pretty close, I think. Yeah. This is hitting on this spot. Yeah, I think that's pretty close. Okay, so let's apply these changes. Actually, let's set that back to 0. Cool. So if we delete this, delete that, delete this camera, save that scene, go back, grab the player spawn thing, go back to this scene, paste that player spawn in, and then put that player spawn somewhere like there. We spawn in. We have some jitteriness. That's because we reverted the change here with the late update on the brain, so we need to go back and do that. Cool. Now, I should be able to walk into these things. Yep. And I should be able to walk into them here. Now, when I walk into this wall... Ooh, I am still rendering in the wrong space. That's an interesting problem. So the colliders, I think, are set up more correctly now. Yep. That looks better. And if I walk down to here, hopefully I shouldn't be able to walk over the edge as much. Yep. All of that's looking better. So this problem here with this is not a collider problem. This is a order problem. So this guy is rendering... here. This sort order group needs to be copied over to this guy. Because it's the one... Sort order groups are for render components. This is just movement stuff now and doesn't know about the render. Oh, look, and it already updated. Okay, so I have to do that in the prefab, though. So... I need to grab this component, copy. I can paste it here. And then I can remove it from this one. Remove, not move. Okay. Cool. So we now have the ability to move the character. He no longer teleports. He is updating correctly, has his colliders in the right spots. Walks behind walls correctly. Okay, that's all good. So now if we go back into the cutscene scene, save, player spawn, we can put somewhere like here. We can delete the old player and the old player virtual camera. Doesn't trigger our cutscenes anymore. Now, why is that? Is that because this thing is looking for the player? Get entity by ID player? Were we getting errors? We weren't getting errors. So this should get the player position without the player having to exist in the scene from the beginning. Huh. Okay, it found the player position correctly. It has the right player movement. So when we're around here, we should be within range for it to trigger. So let's put a breakpoint in here. We are not close enough to cause it to trigger. Oh, this guy has a value in the Y. Is that... No, that is a real value in the Y. Or in the Z, sorry. Yeah, now it triggers. So, is that because the spawn point had a value? It did. This should be 0. Okay, solved. everything should be 0 basically for the Z direction. Everything's on the same plane of existence. Look at chest. Camera didn't move. Now, that's probably because we set our camera to be priority 1. What is our camera setup normally? So we have a camera hidden here right now, which is -1. So before we deleted it, the player camera must not normally be so high. This was probably like priority 0 or something before. Okay, we walk up, look at chest. Oh. Okay. That was messed up. Interesting. That's a problem and a half. Why does this camera look so busted? This looks okay. Oh, it's very jittery on this one. Oh, I'm zoomed to a weird zoom value. If it's not 1 or 2, it just looks weird. That's all that is. Okay. Camera brain needs to also be set to late update instead of smart update. Okay, now he didn't move. Why did the player not move? So normally we have a cutscene thing that says to move the player. That is here, Mimic Intro, which says update. Move player to waypoint 2. Waypoint 2 should be somewhere in here. It is. It's this guy too here. Okay, so waypoint 2 is this one. Okay, it just looks bad when we start the scene, but when... So now when we hit enter here, it should be finding the player, which is this thing. Oh, I'm gonna bet there's a special script we had on this guy in order to make it run, and I just deleted it. So we're gonna have to do the same thing I just did a second ago. We're gonna have to revert these changes. So let's go back here. Sure, we're gonna just revert it anyways. So we're gonna undo all of our cutscene stuff. Discard changes to the cutscene trial. Go back to cutscene trial. Now in here, we're gonna want to grab player spawn, bring player spawn back over again. But before we start doing anything with that, we need to take a look at what this player had. This player had special logic for cutscene movement. So it had entity player, which I think that the player component, player container also has. Yes, but it doesn't have the cutscene movement, and it didn't have nav mesh agent. We'll just copy this component in case there's any special settings I had on that. Paste. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Paste component as new. Okay. Now. Oh, it zoomed in. That was weird. Get rid of the Z value. Let's delete. So this player camera had, yeah, priority 0 is what it had before. Let's just disable these objects for now. That might be enough in case I need to reference them again and I don't have to keep discarding my changes. Also interesting, the pan is happening. I think the pan is happening because what happens now is that when we first start the scene, there's only one camera, which is the waypoint camera. And then it has to blend from that to the higher priority one that it finds. We're not hitting our trigger. Got a little bit of movement on the Z, but that shouldn't matter. Oh, there's two entities with player. That's what's... Yeah, I can't save them. Okay, if that's the case, what we'll do is we'll save as scenes. We'll name this trial 2, and then we'll discard our changes to trial 1. So if we want to, we can go reference the old one. And now in trial 2, we'll delete all that stuff. Okay. Yeah, so basically, even if an object's turned off, my entity system will still find it. So it was finding the other player is probably what was happening, because it was higher in the hierarchy and blah, blah, blah. This should work. Okay, look at chest. Camera pan. Ooh, everything's wonky there. Character moves. Okay, everything's super buggy there. Now, that's going to be because this camera settings needs to be remove. Pixel perfect, I think, number 1. Everything else should be about the same. Maybe it should be transposer instead? Maybe it doesn't like switching between types? Just the whole thing looked kind of like swimmy. Okay, chest. Still a little swimmy. Ooh, interesting. We're stuck now. Why are we stuck? Oh, is there like a collider on the player? What is that circle collider? That's that one. That's the capsule collider. Where is this other circle coming from? Huh. Clearly my rigid body is hitting something. Oh, is that the nav mesh agent somehow? Oh, did the nav mesh agent not get turned off? That's the problem. Interesting. I wonder why the nav mesh agent didn't get turned off. Normally when we turn on player controls, I think that should handle that. check the sequence step and see what's happening. Okay, so this stream has been primarily me just trying to fix up the player controller, which I thought might be part of it, but I didn't realize it was going to be this much. Sequence steps. Player. Nope, that's input waiting. We want set player control. This is not disabling the nav mesh or the nav agent. Interesting. So for some reason this thing was continuing to try and move. Ooh, it wasn't stopping. Yeah, it wasn't self-disabling itself because it wasn't getting close enough. Interesting. Is that because this has a Y value? No? Huh. Something about this new player spawn is different enough that it doesn't end up in the right spot. This is exactly why I need this work this evening, though. Like, getting the player consistent between my scenes so that everything is, like, operating in the exact same way, so that there aren't these weird oddities where, like, one version of the player was working correctly while another version wasn't. Why? I don't know. But if I can get it so that, like, all things are using this, all scenes are using the same player container, then these types of oddities won't come up as much. Because it'll all be the same thing. So, if isNav is true, which should only get set false. Okay. Let's double check that some of this stuff is actually getting hit. So we're walking up to here. We hit a breakpoint. We have triggered our cutscene. That's fine. We're going to hit enter on this. We're going to update our nav. And we're going to set our destination to a nav target. Okay. We're going to walk to that nav target. We never reached our nav target. Remaining distance is 0. That should be less than... Oh, are we hitting errors? Yes. Okay, this ISO... Get component in children. Right, same problem. Now we're going to have to direct reference it for now. That's why he wasn't animating as he was walking. Alright, alright. So in here... This thing needs to reference this thing. This is all getting a little spaghetti codey, but just try and make a note to fix that after. I think there just needs to be a clear definition of like what is What is controlling the animation, I think? We're not animating. Does that mean we're erroring still? It does. Oh, because we're still... Yeah, we don't need that line anymore. Trying to get it and not finding it is going to set it back to null. But we should have it set via the prefab now. So just remove that line. I need to turn off collapsing. I think that's the problem. I'm expecting to see errors down here and they're not showing up because they're at the top and these other prints are getting in the way. Okay, he walks up. Unfortunate that he continues walking in place. And then that looks like a weird sidewalk. But ideally, we are free now. Okay, so we fixed that part of it. Cool. So we now have a character that moves between scenes. He should be consistent. He should be the same. Now, if we go back to the old scene, has any of the stuff we've added to that, for that nav stuff for the cutscene, has that broke him here? Well, that's a problem. Where's the player spawn? Player spawn's here. So why is it spawning him in the middle of nowhere? Okay, fine. Is it because I have a Z value? Nope. Is it legitimately one of those things I added? That's 0, 0 still. That's 0, 0. This value should be this value. Let's try manually setting it. Yeah, he can live here, so not entirely sure why it's not putting him there at the beginning. Were there any errors that I wasn't noticing again? No. We enter in. Position should be set to -7, or 7.9. Nav is true. Just trying things now. Nope, that didn't fix it. Well. Huh. Somehow adding the nav stuff broke player spawning in this scene. Is it broken in the other scene and I just didn't notice? 0, 0 is technically down here. Nope, he's spawning in the right location. And like... yeah, something is updating this guy. we start with those things disabled, does it work okay then? It does. Okay, so it is the nav mesh. By adding the nav mesh stuff to him, he breaks. On spawn, at least. Well, here's a question. What happens when we turn it on? If we start with it off and then enable them, it doesn't break. Okay, sure, why not? I'm gonna solve that later. We're gonna move right along onto the next thing I want to work on.
That's future Jorge's problem.
Not now. How goes art things?
It's artistically creative. Thoughts? Instead of smooshing them, make them all hideous, I just make them look three-dimensional.
So I don't love them in the bottom left, at the very least. Or the bottom of it. Like, in my mind, I'd like them to be center, and by having the shadow on them, it looks like they're not in the center. It looks like they're offset.
Not in the center, because I want them to look like they're in the center, but they are offset, or else they'd be above the tile.
Yeah, but that is messing with my brain. I understand why you made that decision.
Where is this from? What are you?
What are you?
What even are you? Well, that was all because of the choice of things I did there. Nodes! Okay. So, like, that's central.
Like, that looks better to me.
Those look pretty cool. Let me make sure they're actually central. I was off by pixel. And then, yeah, that looks right. Where are you?
What are you?
Pixel. Ah, found you. Dead to me now. Anyway.
Okay. So, I'll be honest. I still don't, like, I'd still prefer them to look embedded in the tile. But I understand that we're having trouble making that look right.
That, and this is reusing assets I already have.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I know reutilization is pretty handy.
For sure. Although these assets are meant to be for the ability icons themselves, not for the
Fair.
Not for the upgrades you would get within the skills.
Ah, fair.
So we'll need different icons regardless of the style.
But the grayed out ones not being active or not being unlocked, these guys all being unlocked, is that logical there?
Yeah, there is a third state that is tricky to keep in mind, which is that there is both not available for purchase, available for purchase, and purchased. Or, there...
Green, red, yellow.
Yeah, because basically you right now have unlocked and locked. But there's technically another state in between, which is, like if you look at the Final Fantasy 12 reference, which does a similar checkerboard type thing, center, your cursor is right next to it, yeah. They have technically the unlocked, which is a full art icon, a available for unlock, which is the like kind of grayed out kind of version, and then they have not available, which is just empty space.
So we can have empty space.
I actually don't want empty space. I actually really don't like how that you can't see it at a glance what is available in like the 12 reference. But so I think we need, it could be the tiles themselves, it could be the icons, I'm not sure, but there should be a some sort of distinguishing,
Like that?
Potentially. But it's not these guys. All of those gray ones, like if you wanted to make them more visible, I actually think making them all gray on the bottom, or maybe not all the same color gray, but like alternating gray values.
Yeah.
But it's more that there needs to be a
Rude.
Yeah, those are continuous behind the scenes.
How dare they?
Because they're connected behind that icon.
How dare they? So rude.
Okay, and then the yellow ones also need the same thing.
Nah, this is gonna be the same problem over here, won't it?
That doesn't look like it.
Looks could be deceiving. Yeah, it's too bright.
And then the problem now is that you need icons. Say the three on in between, right? The white strike icon on the very bottom of that section. So up one white icon up. Left, the left one of those. That one. That's point 1. If you were to go diagonally, I think that's east in our system. Regardless, if you were to go up that way, those 3 in that line,
Yeah.
if those need to be in a state of not purchased, but purchasable.
So, I don't really know how to figure that one out yet. I haven't thought of it.
But and
I do have these barrier things. Like, this could be the unlock.
maybe.
The flourish.
But this is the thing I'm saying is deceptive. Is that, like, yeah, it's not 2 states, it's 3 states.
Oh, what is Fala doing there? Fala, get back.
So I don't necessarily love that that flourish as the unlocked. To me, that's not visible
that was selection.
enough. Yes, but I think
I also had a tone change on the tile, but I broke it.
I think the gray is good.
Okay.
But I think that the difference between something that can be purchased and something that is purchased also needs to be the same level of contrast, or that maybe not contrast is the right word, but same level of, like, identifiable. Like, you should be able to tell at a glance what is a purchased tile and what is a non-purchased tile.
So really, this isn't a good reference because we do not want something that is unidentified.
Yes, but it is a good reference in that it is very clear the 3 states. You can very easily tell what is a purchased icon because it's almost like a completely different texture, and then a available icon is like a completely different texture. And yes, they do choose to do nothing as the not available yet, but I'd like to still show the icon. So
Like that.
I think that makes it harder to read.
That's so cool, though. Oh my goodness, I love that. Not for, like, this case, but that's a really cool thing I just did.
Yeah, I mean, you could put a bit of a clear or like a white in behind, maybe a transparent white to make it look a little bit.
Can't do alpha.
We can if we want.
Alpha
Traditional Pixel didn't really have alpha.
No,
but...
I kind of want to keep that rule.
Okay.
Unless we really have to break it.
Okay. I fear that depending on the icons, it might not read well if you delete the background like that.
Yeah.
But I still think that, yeah, I'm not necessarily saying you need to come up with it right this second, but something to think about is what is the 3 state changes. And I do think 12 is a good reference for having 3 identifiable states. It's just not a great reference because our final state we want to show our icons.
In the floor.
As long as that icon is still readable, but at this point you've now killed some of the icon, which I don't love. And again, you're continuously modifying the grayed out versions right now. You also move that down a little bit. You need to undo 1 or 2 more.
What?
Yeah. You're modifying the gray versions. The gray versions aren't what we need to modify. Again, it's the 3 I was pointing out before. Make those available for purchase, but not purchased.
Yeah.
Right?
And you don't like these flourishes.
No. But it's breaking up these ones. We have to add a new state. It's not modifying the grayed out state. The grayed state technically is correct. That is a very readable difference. It's that we need to add a 3rd state that we need to do. Is the thing that we need to do here.
What if the 3rd state is them going flat? Hey. No, I'm sorry. Excuse you. Break. That's not gonna work.
No, you rotate first. Rotate first.
We're at 26.
45 is what you want to rotate to.
And then you go like, oh, that's not working like that. Ah! Rotate 45.
Oh,
And
if
then
you're...
bring down the height.
Well, you want to bring it down the height, not... you might have to move this into its own...
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Into its own thing, because your box is also off-center, and if your box is off-center, it's not going to work either, so you need to trim your... So...
Sploot.
Technically not correct.
Why?
If you undo one more time. Oh, well, so see how your box is more space on the left than it does on the right?
That shouldn't matter for this.
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that...
I need space for it to stretch and skew.
For sure, but when you rotate, if your box is not the same size, doesn't that cause it to skew?
No, because it's going to go 45 regardless whether that box is weird size or not.
Okay.
Because I can show you the entire thing. That was a small box, right?
Yeah.
Small box. We'll get it as nice and tight as we can. That's 45?
Yep. So copy that. Copy that 45 to a new layer. It's too late. You've gone too far.
And that's 45 there. The whole thing. It doesn't change the box size.
Okay. So... Okay. I'm trying to... I can't visualize or maintain the image in my mind between the two. So that's why I was asking for a copy so that I could see them side by side. You may be right. I just want to explore it, right? Because there's potential for a... So that's one. So then do the small box. Oh, that might not... Yeah.
Still broken, but it doesn't matter because we're going to break it anyway.
Well, it does matter because now it won't necessarily be the same.
It's all going to be okay.
No, it's not the same now. There's an extra dot.
Nothing is okay.
There's a different dot now.
It's fine. So you want small box. That's nice and small. Oh, or whatever.
Well, now that's super weird.
Doesn't matter. See, listen. With extra pixels. They added a pix.
They're not the same though. See how there's an extra pixel on the fire on the bottom left?
Yeah, there's a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is the box size does matter for the rotation.
I don't like that, you're right.
Well, that's fair. So I would... Okay, so yeah,
That's
one...
26, that's 45. That's why. It was a 26.
No, well look, it's still different.
Broken. Okay, you're so right.
So...
We learned something today.
So if you, try doing a big box again to see if we can replicate what you had.
Still different.
Yeah. Well, because the canvas size is different too now. So we
Everything
can't...
makes differences.
Yeah. Actually, do that again. Do that rotation one more time. Do it manually. Ah, yes. See in the center. So do the rotation, and as you rotate, see the white, the dot that appears in the center of the screen.
Oh, that's my rotation focus, isn't it?
That's the pivot. That's the center of your box. And so if your box is not the perfectly centered on your object,
yeah,
then the pivot it rotates around is not the same.
Well, as long as it's within the square, I can't spin it on a rectangle, per se. Like, this will make my pivot really weird.
Yes. But that pivots around it. But that does change the way the pixel algorithm...
But as long as I'm square, it shouldn't matter, right? Yeah.
Approximately.
Approximately.
I would still say it's your best bet to do it in a clean scene and to, like, actually...
I see what you mean.
So, like, take a copy of it, bring it to a new scene, do a trim of your canvas size, and then select the whole thing, and then rotate. Well, oh, now you're going to lose pixels. I see the problem.
Yep.
You need to make your canvas size... so you need to trim... Okay, so undo that. So then, after you've trimmed, increase your canvas size, but increase it from the center by like 4 pixels. Maybe an extra 34 on that one. Yeah. And now this should give you enough room to rotate and not lose any quality.
I mean, no matter what I do, it becomes jank.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have this page, basically.
Sploot.
And now this is technically flattened into an isometric style.
Technically, and then just
do a little bit of cleanup on it, but
the sploots, man. The sploots are real.
Sure.
I know that sound.
Sure.
Now it's so small. That looks good for actually the locked ones. So these are like the unlocked, unpurchased. These are purchased and active. These are unlocked and unpurchasable. By the Bionic Ray.
For sure, we could try it. I am concerned about it being like the fact that when we shrink and scale like that, it loses a bit of its definition, means that it might be hard to tell at a glance the locked ones because the icons aren't identifiable.
Yeah, but I don't like skewing it like this. I think our details are going to get lost.
Even with this larger size, we still don't have enough room to make these things readable.
I think it's just either I gotta draw them naturally this way, or we just don't have the pixel capabilities to draw them isometrically like this.
Okay. We're just too low res. Okay.
We're just too low res.
This is a 640 by 360. Or
I could also do like treasure chest with this as a logo on top of it. Like, there's other options.
Oh, is your camera... Your resolution might be wrong.
My resolution? 640 by 320?
Yeah, I have 640 by 360.
Why do you have 360?
Because that's the right one.
Why have I been building this entire thing in a wrong resolution, Tohi? It's all your fault.
Probably because I told you wrong?
Yeah.
Is that right?
So 360?
Let me double check.
It does give us a little more space.
$1280 by 720. Yeah, and then 720 divided by 2. Yeah, it should be 360.
Okay, so I'll have this much more to play with.
Yeah, I think you may have been building at a 4:3 resolution. No, that's 480.
Maybe I just messed up.
Yeah.
Whoopsie.
So 640 by 360. Okay.
Oh, glad you caught that. I have a lot more space now. I don't think I still have enough space for like ×2.
No, I don't think so either. I think the kind of in between you have here is actually a very good sizing. Yeah. But I think this gives you more room for like controls on the bottom, as well as maybe potentially having some descriptor section on the top. You could do.
I'm gonna put the descriptors on like the bottom tier here, and then
the description of some of these might be very long though. I don't know. I might need to give you better references for some placeholder text.
Yeah, because all I got right now is one of these guys, right?
Yeah.
Where is it? That's all I got.
Yeah, it's just scribbles.
Which is fine. And I did do the description text in my first one. What did I write? Oh! What happened?
Oh, did all your stuff break?
All my stuff broke.
You might want to save as a new Sprite file. And then you might want to load up your old one.
Right?
I imagine that was messing with the canvas size, somehow broke it.
Probably. Yeah. Superior sword. The sword's guard strongly resembles a pair of bat wings. Its grip is dark purple leather, and its pommel has 3 small rubies. Inspired by Dwarf Fortress.
Okay. Can you, this one is at 360.
What the heck?
Can you try your other blue one? The first one? The blue themed?
Well, this is all the... I need to shut this one down. I have too many layers. There's so many layers. I just want to close this because wonk.
You still have checkerboard open? Yeah, so this is fun. So at some point you changed your canvas size to 320 and then back up to 360, which caused everything to break.
Womp.
Womp indeed. Okay.
Glad we caught that.
Okay. You should be able to recover.
Flame sword.
You should be able to recover from where you're at though.
Yeah, I mean I have this one. I had the new one. Oh, pardon me.
Okay. Okay, going back to me, where are we at in time? We've been streaming for just over 2 hours.
What do you think of the doodads, though?
The doodads?
Yeah, the little flourishes on the side. The, tapestry.
I don't love it.
Okay.
But I want to see it in it finished, and then we can make some calls.
Cool.
Yeah. I would honestly, I think your next step would be copying all of what you have here to your old version, which isn't broken, basically. But try and salvage it from this one to the other one.
I see.
Yeah. But I think this is a good place to call the stream at the very least. I didn't get much done on my side. I like mostly got the character kind of set up so he's spawnable, but there's some weird bugs with it. But I was hoping to get some of the dialogue anchoring done, as well as trying to get some of this movement and animations to look a little bit more fluid. So yeah, everything's busted right now. But yeah, so it's because I turned off the components. So if I come back here and I turn them back on again, yeah. So probably my next steps, which will probably happen off camera, is continuing to refine the player movement so that when he walks, instead of walking directly to the waypoint, which can be at sometimes weird angles, he should walk in his standard isometric directions. So i.e. that's a weird angle that he's walking at there. But if I walk up or down, it's more on like a diagonal. And he should always walk on these directions at all times. Okay. Let's call it here. I'll continue playing with cutscene stuff off camera. Come back with hopefully more of this resolved. I don't know if this was a good stream, but I felt like I hadn't done one in a while, so we tried.
I had fun.
I had fun too.
I made a thing.
All right. For now, though, this is going to be fire. Our fire alarm is beeping.
It's chirping.
It's chirping. It's mad at us because it went off earlier, and now it's going to be mad.
How dare it be mad at my fish sticks?
Okay. That's what that noise